late ako ng start ngayon kasi may pinapaayos sa akin and medyo tinanghali ako ng gising kaya late ko na siya nasimulan. So, ayun. Anyway, natapos ko naman siya actually bago mag-7 tapos na ako. Nung pagka-send ko sa inyo nung message kanina, malapit na ako matapos ng time na yan. So, ayun. Pero 7:30 kasi nasabi kong start. So, medyo nag-ano rin ako. Nag-ayos na rin ako. So, anyway. So, let's start in the discussion of lesson 2.2, which is about simple manipulations of discrete time signals. Okay? So, in the context ng signal processing, essentially, ang manipulation mag-indigo tayo ngayon. Okay. Yung manipulation, okay, when you say manipulation, essentially, ano rin yan? Kasi when you say manipulation, you modify. Okay? So, when you modify discrete time signals, okay? So, manipulation is modification. Wait lang, may problema ang settings ng aking tablet. Okay. So when you say modification, essentially, the way you can modify signals, okay, or the way you can modify discrete time signals or your data, okay, is essentially by performing operations, okay, on these signals. Ibig sabihin, para magawa niyo yung manipulation or yung modification na gusto niyo sa isang signal, you have to perform operations. You have to perform operations on that signal. Okay? So, and when you are performing operations on the signal, essentially, ang ginagawa niyo diyan, yan na yung tinatawag na processing. Okay? Yan yung tinatawag na processing ngayon. Okay? So yung when you perform operations on the signal, you are said to be performing or you are said to be processing your signal or processing your data. Okay? So andito tayo sa part na ng signal processing. Okay? And we will discuss yung mga basic, okay, mga basic operations. So syempre, ang mga operations niyo would start from the very basic and simple ones to the more complex, okay? Pero in fact, yung complex operations, okay? Complex operations on signals. Operations on or complex processing of signals, okay? Are actually are made up of operations made up of basic and simple operations. So pag yung mga basic and simple operations pinagsama-sama nyo in a certain fashion, okay, in a certain manner, okay, makakabuo kayo ng mga complex operations or complex processing of your signals. Okay, so it all boils down, okay, to the fundamental operation, basic operations na pwede natin gawin sa signal o sa data natin. Okay, naintindihan ba yun? Okay. And for example, meron tayong given na signal, say x of n. Okay, when we have a signal such as x of n, meron dalawang attribute yung signal niyo na pwede niyo baguhin. Okay? So, dito sa x of n na to, dalawa kasi kagad yung immediate na makikita ninyo. Okay? N, which represents your time index. Okay? And your x, which represents your signal value. Okay? So, yung dalawang yan, immediately, makikita nyo kagad dyan sa function form ng signal niyo. Okay? And right there and then, maiisip niyo na yung operations ng signal niyo, okay, can be done on the time index or it can be done on the signal value. So, which means you can modify the time index or you can modify the signal value. So, yung operations natin are actually classified on those two. Okay? So, we have operations that are performed on your independent variable. Okay? So, when you do your operations on the time index, you are performing operations. You're performing operations on the independent variable. Okay? Which essentially, yung n niyo o yung time index niyo is the independent variable of your signal xn. Okay? While itong signal value niyo if you actually modify yung signal value niyo, okay, you are performing operations essentially on the signal value, on the value of the signal. Well, technically, in the function form, yan din yung dependent variable kasi. Again, ang kino-consider nating signal, okay, or the signals that we are dealing mostly in this course are discrete time signals. So, which means they are dependent on time. So, yung signal value ninyo nakadepende sa time. So, yung time na nga na yun is represented by your time index. Okay? And, ayun, yung dependent variable ninyo is your signal value. Okay? So, essentially, dyan iikot yung discussion nung simple manipulation of signals. So, nakagrupo yung mga operations niyo into this and into this. Okay? Naintindihan ba to? Okay. Now, let's start with transformation of the independent variable. Okay, so we transform, we do operations on the independent variable. Now, there are three manipulations that involve operations on the time index of your signal. So, number one of which is time shifting. Okay? So, ito, ilang beses ko na-discuss ito sa mga previous lessons natin. Okay, adding or subtracting a positive integer to the time index shifts the signal, okay, either by delaying it or advancing it. Okay, that is given xn, the expression x of n minus k, okay, delays the signal by k number of samples, okay, while x of n plus k advances the signal by k number of samples. In terms of its graph, okay, delay means shifting the samples to the right, okay, because you're trying to start the signal value at a later time, kaya delay yung tawag doon. Okay, alam ko na-explain ko na ito in a previous discussion. While advanced means shifting samples to the left. Okay, which means that you are pulling the signal value, okay, ahead of when it is supposed to appear. Okay, ito lang ha. In practice, okay, ano lang natin sa practice. So in practice, shifting, for real-time signal processing. Okay, real time. Ibig sabihin, you process the signal in the real time. Okay? So siguro naintindihan naman natin lahat yung konteksto ng real time signal processing. Okay lang ba? Ibig sabihin, you process the signal as it comes, as the signal value is generated. Okay, so usually ginagawa niyo yun kapag, for example, meron kayong sensor na kumukuha ng value, okay, or nagbabasa ng measurement, and pinaprocess niyo na kagad yung output nung pinaprocess niyo na kagad yung measurement nung sensor niyo. Okay, so that's real-time signal processing. For real-time signal processing, signal or advancing your signal, is practically impossible to achieve. So hindi kayo kung ang processing niyo ay real time, you can never perform signal advance operations. Okay? So hindi kayo makakapag-perform ng signal advance operations kapag real time yung signal processing niyo. For the obvious reason na signal advancing involves pulling your signal value ahead of time. Okay? Kung hindi pa nga na-generate yung signal kasi nga real time yung signal processing niyo, okay, then it is impossible for you to it is impossible for you to pull that signal value ahead of time kasi wala pa siya, hindi pa siya na-generate. Naintindihan ba yun? Okay, pero again, for real time signal processing, ang signal delay is possible. Practically, pwede nyo i-perform ang signal processing, ang signal delay kapag meron kayong real-time signal processing system. Okay? Basically, para ma-delay nyo kasi ang isang signal, or ang isang signal value, kailangan nyo muna siyang i-store sa isang memory. Tapos, kapag kailangan nyo na siya, tsaka nyo siya hugutin galing sa memory. So that's essentially the operation ng signal shifting. Okay, ang signal shifting actually involves storing your signal in a memory. Okay, in a memory storage. Okay, tapos you pull the signal value when it is needed. Okay? So pag i-implement nyo ang signal shifting, okay, kailangan nyo ng storage. Kailangan nyo ng memory storage para sa signaling. Okay? Naintindihan ba yun? Okay. So, if you look at example 7, medyo makikita nyo dyan yung, ma-appreciate nyo dyan yung parang yung mathematics of yung math ng signal shifting. Okay? So essentially, for example, kung meron kayong signal na given, like for example this one, and if you are asked to evaluate x of n minus 3, okay, and x of n plus 2, okay. So if you want to evaluate x of n minus 3, okay, when n is equal to 0, okay. So you have to replace n here with 0. So magiging x of 0 minus 3 to. And then 0 minus 3 is of course negative 3. Okay? So ibig sabihin nun, okay, ibig sabihin nito is at n equal 0, kapag ang time index nyo ay 0, okay, ang signal value nung na-process yung signal, okay, ang signal value nung na-process yung signal, ibig sabihin ito na yung nagawa nyo na ng operations. Okay? So at n equals 0, ang signal value nung na-process yung signal is equivalent to the value of x of negative 3. So itong x of negative 3, dito natin siya titingnan. Okay? Ano yung x of negative 3 dyan? Doon sa signal niyo. What is x of negative 3 in this of n?
1 po.
That would be 1. Ito yan. Kasi ito yung 0. When n is equal to 0, ito yan. Original signal to ha. Pansinin nyo na ito yung original signal with its original index. Okay, yan yung original signal with its original index. Okay. Ito yung signal, okay, with the new index and with the new signal value. So ito yung process signal. Process ito. Ito yung original. So sa una medyo nakakalito ito, no? Kasi once na hindi nyo ma-separate yung hindi nyo ma-separate alin yung process, alin yung original na signal. So kailangan ma-process nyo siya. Ma-separate nyo yung dalawa. Okay? So again, pagka tinutukoy natin yung process, okay. Ito kasi yung operation. This was the operation. Okay? Try nga natin itong isang. Ayan. This was the operation. Or this was the process signal. Okay? So, dun sa process signal niyo, kung ito yung time index ng process signal niyo. Okay? Ibig sabihin nun, yung x of negative 3 dito, okay, is the value of your process signal at n equals 0. Saan natin kukunin yung x of negative 3? Dun sa original. Naintindihan yun? So, ayun. So, ibig sabihin at n equals 0, ang value nung process signal ninyo is 1. So, instead na 4 siya, originally, magiging 1 na ngayon siya. Okay? Naintindihan nyo? Hello? Andiyan ba ako? Dinig niyo ako? Okay. Nawala ba ako? I mean, tumahimik ako, di ba? Biglaan tumahimik. Kasi nakita ko na gano'n yung computer ko, nawala daw akong internet. So tumahimik ako. Pero hindi ko alam kung all the while nakakonect ako or marinig niyo ako. Anyway, so yun na nga, no? Ngayon, pinakamagandang one way to actually look at this on a bigger scale is to actually put it on a table. Ilagay natin siya sa isang itabulate natin siya. Okay? So paano yung tabulation? Okay? So pag magta-tabulate tayo ng signal, pag magta-tabulate tayo ng signal, essentially, gawa kayo ng time index. Okay? You create a row. Dito medyo row-wise yung ko kasi para makatipid ako ng space, no? Kasi kapag ginawa kong columnar yung table ko, sasakop siya ng malaking space pababa. Okay, so para medyo matipid sa space yung row-wise yung ko, yung ginamit yung table. So gawa muna kayo ng original ng original na time index. Okay? At saka yung original signal niyo. Okay. Now, you actually have the option of listing yung manipulated time index niyo. Okay? You can generate a row, okay, of your manipulated time index. What is manipulated time index? Okay. Yung manipulated time index niyo kasi ito 'yon. yung n-3 dito. Okay, originally, ang ano niyo, ang time index niyo is n. Okay? I-manipulate natin 'yan. That's why the operation is called transformation of the independent variable. Okay, we will have to transform this independent variable from n to n-3. Okay? Kaya yung n-3 na 'yan yung manipulated time index natin. Okay, so that's n-3. Now, how would n-3 work? Okay. Yung n-3 na yan is essentially kung ano yung original n plus -3. So, here sa column na to, for example, if the original time index is -8, then the manipulated time index is -8 minus 3, which is -11. Naintindihan? Okay? So, dito rin, as another example, kung ang original time index niyo ay -7, okay, then the manipulated time index is -7 minus 3. So, that should give you -10. Okay? Now, itong manipulated time index na to, yun ang gagamitin natin ngayon to index your original signal. Okay? To index your original signal para makuha nyo yung value ng process signal niyo. Okay? So, use the manipulated time index to index the original signal, okay, to get the manipulated signal. Anong ibig sabihin doon? Ibig sabihin, itong -11 dito, okay, this -11, ay, eto na naman siya. Saglit ah. Okay. So, so ibig sabihin, gagamitin natin itong manipulated time index ninyo para mahanap natin kung ano dapat yung signal value, okay, at this particular point in time. So in this case, ang lumalabas na signal value nyo dapat is yung x of -11 nung original signal niyo. Okay? And from here, what is x of -11 nung original signal niyo? So medyo malayo na siya kasi if this is n equals 0, okay, this is n equals 0, then ang x of -11, malayo pa. Okay. In fact, dulo niya kasi is x of -5 eh. So ito yung x of -5 niyo. Okay? So, kung titingnan niyo ngayon, kung kukumpletuhin niyo tong manipulated signal niyo, okay, which is the index, okay, which is the index of your or which is obtained by indexing the original signal with the manipulated index. Lagyan natin yan. Ito is obtained by indexing the original xn, okay, with manipulated n, which is now n-3 dapat. Okay? So kung kumpletuhin natin yung yung indexing nung nung original signal natin. So ma-generate natin yung table na yan. Okay, ma-generate natin yung table na yan. So meron yung row na yan. So you have x of -11, x of -10, x of -9, x of -3, and so on. Okay? Naintindihan ba ako saan nanggaling? Yung second row? Okay. Now, tignan nyo mabuti na it would appear na dito, okay, dyan unang lalabas. Ang kapal nung Pag mo sobrang nipis na. Dyan unang lalabas yung x of -5. That's where this is where, okay, it would first appear. Kasi ang signal ninyo, yung original signal ninyo, has a first non-zero value sa x of negative 5 or sa n equals negative 5, sorry. Sa n equals negative 5. Okay? At magkakaroon siya ng last non-zero value when n, okay, equals n equals negative 5 ito. Yan. At magkakaroon siya ng last non-zero value when n, okay, equals, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. When n equals 4. So, yan yung range kasi nung signal niyo. Okay? So, in that case, makikita ninyo na unang mag-a-appear, okay? Unang mag-a-appear ang x of negative 5. Okay? Kasi ito yung x of negative 5 sa original signal niyo. That's x of negative 5. And this is x of 4. So, una siyang mag-a-appear dito sa index na to or dito sa column na to. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, dyan din unang mag-a-appear yung first non-zero sample nung manipulated signal niyo. Okay? Dyan din unang mag-a-appear yung manipulated na yung first non-zero sample ng manipulated signal niyo. So, from there, that's x of negative 5, x of negative 4, okay, which is yung 0. Okay? Yung x of negative 3, which is 1. Okay? Makikita nyo naman, niligyan ko ng arrow to. So, which means itong value na to, actually, from the original na negative 5 na time index, lalabas ngayon siya instead sa negative 2. Yung sample na negative 1, okay, will appear, okay, first when the index is now at negative 2. Okay, naintindihan ba? Okay. So, ayun, yun yung kaya makita niyo ngayon na delayed yung signal niyo ngayon talaga. Okay? Your signal now is delayed. Okay? Kasi instead na ang unang signal value ninyo, okay, is would appear at when n is equal to negative 5. Okay? Yung signal niyo would instead your signal would actually start, okay, when n is equal to negative 2. So delayed siya by 3 samples. Okay? Your signal would only start after 3 samples of when it is supposed to start. Naintindihan 'yon? Okay? So, I hope na masusundan niyo yung pattern na 'yan in order for you to also know kung paano naman siya with x of n plus 2. Okay? Pero ito lang ang reminder ko while ito na yung bago nyong signal, ito na yung bago nyong signal. Okay? While this is your new signal, okay? This is still your original time index. I mean, this is still your time index. Yan pa rin yung time index niya. Okay? So, ang time index kasi hindi siya nagbabago. Okay? The time index vector should not supposed to be changed. Okay? Maaari nyo lang i-shift yung signal ninyo. Okay? Maaari nyo lang i-shift yung signal ninyo. Pero kaya nga natin siya na-perceive as shifting. Kasi yung reference natin na time index naka-fix. Okay? Kasi imagine niyo kung pati yung time index natin papalitan natin. Hindi niyo mape-perceive yung shifting. Okay, hindi niyo mape-perceive yung shifting na 'yan. Okay, kasi ito, tingnan niyo 'to. Kung halimbawa na ang original signal niyo ay ito. That's your original signal. Ang nipis talaga niya. Pag naman sobrang kapal naman. Okay. Ito yung original signal niyo. Take note of the time index. Okay, take note of the time index. Okay? Ngayon kung halimbawa, nag-manipulate kayo ng signal by advancing the signal. Pero ang thinking ninyo, papalitan nyo rin yung time index nung process signal ninyo. Okay? At naisip nyo na ang gagamitin yung bagong time index ay yung manipulated time index. So, ito yung magiging signal ninyo. Tingnan nyo kung may nabago sa signal ninyo with respect sa, sa time index. Meron ba? Kung ito gagamitin kong time index ng manipulated signal ko, tingnan nyo, parehong-pareho yung signal na yan. In terms ng time index niya, tsaka ng signal value niya. So, kung gagamitin niyo yung manipulated time index as the time index of the new signal, ang perception nyo, wala kayong nabago sa signal niyo. Wala nangyaring shifting kasi pareho lang siya ng time index. Yung negative 1, ang kanyang time index, negative 5 pa rin. Okay? Yung 0, ang time index niya, negative 4 pa rin. And so on. So, ang point ko, hindi yan yung time index ng manipulated signal niyo. Ang time index ng manipulated signal niyo is, ang time index ng manipulated signal niyo is eto pa rin. Yung original na time index. Okay? Naintindihan ba ako doon? Okay. So again, medyo at the start medyo nakakalito itong mga mga operations na to. Pero once na you are able to get a handle of this. Okay? Pag medyo na master niyo to at medyo na nagkaroon kayo ng thinking, okay? Ng tamang thinking with regards to this to these operations. It will coalesce on your mind kung paano yung signal shifting na sinasabi natin. Okay? So I hope na tingnan niyo mabuti. Okay, tingnan niyo mabuti yung part na yan, okay, yung signal shifting. Kasi yung signal shifting na yan is something that we will have to do over and over again. Okay? So, yun. So, the signal shifting. So, yung second operation that you can perform on your signal, okay, in terms of its time index or independent variable, is yung tinatawag nating time folding or reversal. Okay? So, ang time folding or reversal, but hindi ko ma-pronounce ang R at saka S ng magkasunod. Reversal. Ayun, okay na. Time folding or reversal. Time folding or reversal. Hindi ko siya ma-pronounce ng tama. Another useful modification of the time index is to replace the independent variable n by negative n. So essentially, ang operation na to, yung reversal, okay, time reversal, okay, is essentially involves the replacement, okay, of n with negative n. Okay? So, in effect, ganito yung magiging epekto niya, no? Tingnan natin yung mangyayari kapag tingnan natin yung mangyayari kapag time reverse natin ang isang signal. Okay? So, again, ito pa rin yung signal niyo. Okay? Yan pa rin yung signal niyo. Ngayon, again, pwede niyo siyang tingnan sa perspective ng babaguhin niyo yung time index. Okay? So sabi nga natin, yung n, papalitan natin ng negative n. Okay? So which means kung negative 8 siya originally, yung ating manipulated time index magiging positive 8. Naintindihan? Okay? So yung negative 7 magiging positive 7 and so on and so forth. Tapos, we will use this manipulated time index, okay, in order to index the original signal. Okay? So we will index now the original signal. So ito yung x of 8, x of 7, x of 6, x of 5, okay, x of 4, x of 3, x of 2, x of 1, and so on. Now, notice, dun sa original signal ninyo, this is x of 4. Tama ba? Ito, yung x of 4. Tama? Now, in my process signal, in the time reverse signal, nandito yung x of 4. Okay? Nandito siya. So, ibig sabihin, in the manipulated signal, itong sample na to, okay, would actually appear when n equals negative 4. Okay? Instead of when actually n equals 4. So, ano essentially nangyari dito sa signal niyo? Tingnan niyo yung iba pang set of values. 4, 4, 4, 4, 4. So, ito x of 3 ito yun. Yung x of 3 na yun. Ito, x of 2. Ito yun, x of 2. Itong x of 1 na to, okay, yung, ayan, ito yan. X of 0, ito. So, they appear of the same time index. Pero ito, x of negative 1, okay, x of negative 1 ninyo, ito yung 3. So, parang ito napunta dito, ito napunta dito, ito napunta dito, and so on. Tapos ito, napunta dun. So, ano essentially nangyari doon sa signal ninyo?
Nag-flip po.
Yun nga yung tawag dun sa operation, nag-flip siya. Okay, the signal was flip. Okay, the signal was flip. Yan. So, essentially, ang mangyayari dyan is, lahat ng signal values ninyo na nasa positive n, okay, na nasa, na may index na positive n, mapapalitan ng negative n yung index nila. So, instead of having your signal at x of 4, yung x of 4 magiging mapupunta sa sa x of negative 4 sa process signal. Okay? So actually ito, okay, itong x of negative 5 niyo originally yung x of negative 5 niyo originally magiging x of positive 5 siya. Ba yan? Magiging x of positive 5 siya dun sa manipulated signal niyo. Okay? So that's signal flipping or signal folding. Okay? Naintindihan po? Okay. Now, it might be, it is also of interest for us to know what would happen pag pinagsama natin yung flipping and delay or flipping and advance. Okay? So, sige, tingnan na natin pagkatapos. Okay. Ganito, no? For example, we are trying to evaluate itong x of negative n plus 3. X of negative n minus 3. Okay. So, ito yung table na yun. This is for x of negative n minus 3. Okay. So, again, ang pinakamadaling way to work this around on a table is to produce the manipulated time index. Okay. Produce natin yung manipulated time index by computing yung negative n minus 3 with respect dito sa original n ninyo. Okay. So, if this is negative 8 minus 3. So, this is negative of negative 8 minus 3. So, 5 siya. Tama ba? It's negative of negative 8 Kasi negative yung n nyo Tapos negative pa yung given nyo na n. So, that's negative n minus 3 when n equals -8, that becomes 8 negative of -8 minus 3. So kaya siya positive 5. Okay, naintindihan? Okay. So, pag kinumpleto nyo yan, that's 5, then 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, and so on. Okay? Now, take note na, again, yung original signal ninyo, ang pinakahuling ano niya, ang pinakahuling non-zero value niya, okay, is para sa x of 4, okay, at ang pinakauna niyang non-zero value, okay, ay x of -5. Okay? So, kung i-index natin ngayon ito, kung gagamitin natin itong manipulated time index niyo to index the original signal. So, this is x of 5, x of 4, x of 3, x of 2, and so on. And matatake note natin na dito unang mag-a-appear yung x of 4, which is your last non-zero signal value. Okay? Which is the last non-zero signal value of your original signal. Ito nga yun, yung 4 na to. So, diyan magsisimula ngayon yung signal niyo. So, that is 4, tapos x of 3 is 4, x of 2 is 4, and so on. Saan siya matatapos? Dito sa x of -5. Which diyan lalabas yung -1. So, ano essentially? So, ito ngayon yung signal niyo. Ito yung process signal nyo ngayon. Okay? With this appearing as the time index. Yan yung time index ng original. Yan yung time index nung manipulated signal niyo. Okay. Ngayon, ano essentially nangyari dun sa signal niyo? Okay. Una-una, kung ikukumpara niyo yun sa original signal, okay, obviously, yung signal niyo na-flip. Okay, na-flip siya. Kaya lang, since may knowledge tayo kung ano yung itsura ng signal na na-flip nyo na, alam natin na aside from flipping yung signal, nagkaroon pa siya ng shifting. Kasi kung ito yung flip signal niyo, okay, kung ito yung flip signal niyo, yan yung flip signal niyo, okay, ano nangyari from here to here? Anong operation yung nangyari from the flip signal dun sa manipulated signal natin on the second case? Kumpara niyo yung dalawang nilagyan ko ng rectangle. Ano nangyari sa kanila essentially? Aside from flipping.
Nag-advance po, sir.
Nag-advance, okay? So, nag-shift siya, and in particular, yung shifting nyo, advance. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, yung x of -n minus 3, okay, flips your signal, ibig sabihin, piniflip niya yung signal mo, flips xn, then, shifts it to the left. So, yung shifting to the left nga is advancing or signal advance. So, flip and advance yun nangyari dun sa x of -n minus 3. Naintindihan? So far, may questions ba? Sadali lang mag-game lang tuloy. May questions ba kayo? So, ayun, yun yung nangyari, no? So, x -n minus 3 is flip and advance pala. Okay? So, ayun. pwede yung flip and advance ba? Pwede ko ba ring tawagin na advance and flip? Or advance then flip? Sige, hindi ko muna hihingin sa inyo yung sagot. Pero pag-isipan niyo 'yun pag sinabi ko bang question to ha. Pag sinabi kong a signal is flip then advance. Okay. Is it equivalent? Okay. Lagyan natin ng question mark sa taas para tanong siya. Okay. So, a signal is flip and then advanced. Okay. Is it equal to a signal that is advanced then flip? Okay. Pag-isipan niyo yan ha. And also, aside from flip at advance, pwede namang flip and delay. Okay? Ito kasi, itong question na to, okay, has something to do with, pagiging commutative of, the flip shift operation. Okay? So, you can, pwede nyo pag-isipan kung commutative ba yung flip shift operation. Ibig sabihin, pwede ko bang, pag sinabi ko bang ang signal ay na flip and shift ko, will I also produce the same signal if I shift and then flip that signal? Okay, naintindihan niyo yung question? Okay, so ayun. So these are the graphical representation of your signal. Okay. Actually binigay ko rin dito yung binigay ko nga ba? Hindi. Dito nilagay ko yung vector form nung xn-3. Okay. Yung vector form nung xn-3. Okay. So ayan, pag meron tayong quiz, for example, o kaya exam, okay, ang signals ninyo, okay, by default, should be given in vector form. Okay? Kailangan siyang ibigay in vector form. Naintindihan? So, ayun. Although kung tutusin, the table should have been sufficient presentation of your signal. Pero kasi nga dahil nga sa one outcome that we are trying to learn in this part of your lesson is for you to express your signal in different forms. Okay? So aside from expressing it in a table, in a tabular form, okay? By default, gusto natin siyang ma-present in vector form. Okay? And pansinin niyo, ito yung sinasabi ko kanina pala na kaya pala parang sabi ko may kulang sa sinasabi ko kanina. Ito yung sinasabi ko na na ang lagi niyong basis is yung original na time index pa rin. Okay? Ito yung signal niyo. Okay, papansinin niyo yung signal niyo tsaka yung vector form niya. Ito yung signal niyo. This was your signal. Yan. Okay? Ito yung vector form niya. Tingnan niyo kung ano yung naka-reference dito. Okay, ito yan. Yan. Okay, so ano yung basis nung paglalagay ko nito? Hindi naman yung manipulated time index eh. Ang basis ng paglalagay ko niyan ay yung original time index pa rin. Okay? Naintindihan po ba? Okay. So, yun. So, that's time shifting, time folding, and time scaling or resampling. Okay? So, a third modification of the independent variable involves replacing n with an. Okay? Where a is a positive rational number. Okay? So, ayun. If A is greater than 1, okay, this results to resampling the signal every A samples about the n equals 0 sample. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, kapag meron kayong x of n, okay, at yung n ay ni-replace nyo with an, given that yung ipapapalit nyo sa a ay greater than 1, okay, yung magiging signal x of an ninyo, okay, yan yung, ito na yung manipulated signal ninyo, okay, is ganito yung mangyayari sa kanya. Halimbawa, ito yung signal ninyo. Halimbawa, ito yung signal ninyo when n equals 0. That's the value, okay, of your signal when n equals 0. Okay, ganito yung ito. Okay, sorry. Re-represent natin ito ng kulay red na ano. Okay. So, yan, lagyan natin yung kulay red. Okay. So, itong a of xn ninyo, okay, when a equals 1, okay, would resample your signal, okay, for every a samples. Okay, so ibig sabihin, magsisimula siya dito sa n equals 0. Depende sa value ng a, no? Sabi natin a equals 1. Ay, wag 1. A equals 2. Okay? Pag yung a nyo is equal to, which is essentially leads you to x of 2n, okay, galing dito, okay, kukunin nyo yung sample na yan, okay, tapos maglalaktaw siya ng isa, okay, maglalaktaw siya ng 1 sample, or essentially mag-i-skip siya ng a minus 1 sample. So in this case, if a is 2, so mag-i-skip siya ng 1 sample. Okay? So, galing dito sa n equals 0, mag-i-skip siya ng 1 sample. Then, yung next sample na kukunin niya, eto na. Okay? So, kung meron pa mga kasunod na sample yan, for example, ito yung mga kasunod yung sample. No? Yan, 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 at saka yan. Okay? Yung mga susunod diyan na mga kukunin niya. Again, magi-skip siya ng 1 sample. Okay? When a is equal to 2. Okay? So, ito, kukunin niya, skip 1 sample, kukunin niya to, skip 1 sample, kukunin niya to, skip 1 sample, kukunin niya to. Okay? Skip 1 sample. Then kukunin niya yung next sample. Okay? Naintindihan? Now, paano doon sa negative n? Paano dito sa part na to? Actually, ganun pa rin ha. Ito lagi yung reference niya. Kaya nandyan yung part na sinabi niyang about the n minus 0 sample. Okay, kasi ito yung parang pinaka-reference niya. So from here, mag-i-skip siya ng 1 sample, kukunin niya to. Okay? Mag-i-skip siya ng 1 sample, kukunin niya yung next sample. Pero syempre, hindi ganun yung proseso, hindi ganun yung actual process nun. Kasi syempre, sequential yung sequential yung niya. Okay? Sequential yung pagpa-process niya ng signal. Okay? So, may mga gagawin siyang set of operations bago niya gawin itong eksaktong operation na to. Just to determine kung ano yung mga kukunin niyang samples na ito yung magiging reference niya. Okay? Pero essentially, what happened to your signal in terms of the number of samples? Okay? Dun sa manipulated signals niyo, ano nangyari dun sa number of samples niya? Dumami ba or kumonte?
Kumonti po, sir.
Kumonti siya, okay. So kasi yung original na samples niyo, okay, o original signal niyo is yung ito lahat 'yan. Okay, pero yung process na sample niyo na is yung kulay red lang na mga samples. So obviously, nabawasan kayo ng sample. Okay, kaya ang tawag sa process na to ay the number of samples has been decreased. Okay? Kaya ang tawag sa proseso na to, yung x of an when a is greater than 1, okay? Yung tawag sa operation na yan is down sampling. Okay? Essentially, may mga samples na kayo. Ngayon, kung gusto niyo magbawas ng sample, what you can do is to do a resampling of your signal. Essentially, yung mga operations, okay, yung mga operations na under nito, time scaling or resampling, yun nga yung tawag doon, resampling. Okay? Because essentially, may mga samples ka na, it's either padadamihin mo yung number of samples mo, o kaya pakukuntiin mo siya. So, yung pagpapakunti ng samples mo is achieved by multiplying n with a number greater than 1. Okay? So, the process then is now what we call downsampling. Okay? As opposed naman sa operation for x of n, okay, when n is replaced by an, okay? Pero this time, yung an natin, or yung a pala natin, is between 0 and 1. So, ibig sabihin, fractional number siya, no? Okay? Naintindihan ba yun? Okay. Ganito naman yung mangyayari sa kanya. Again, magsisimula tayo sa dito. Okay. So, yan yung when n equals 0 na sample. Tapos, maglagay tayo ng mga samples, kunwari. Sa negative part. Okay. Tsaka sa positive part. Okay. So, when a is between 0 and 1, so when a is a fractional, fractional, essentially. Okay. Yung proseso nyo naman dito is involves kung dito skipping, you skip a minus 1 samples. Okay. Dito naman you're adding. Okay. You're adding or hindi pala adding. Inserting, yun pala yung tamang term. Inserting a minus 1 samples. Ibig sabihin, magsisingit ka ng sample in between samples. Okay, between samples. Ngayon, ito lang yung question dyan. Okay, ito lang yung question dyan. Kung magsisingit ka ng sample, anong value ng sample ang isisingit mo? Okay, anong value ng sample ang isisingit mo? Okay. Depende siya sa application. Okay, depende siya sa application. Pero ang options, okay. Ang common na options is yung samples na yan may be zeros. Okay, it may be zeros. Okay. And it may be it may be the average between immediate values. Okay, pwede niyo kunin yung values surrounding. Okay, surrounding the point where you would insert the sample. Tapos yung magiging average nun, yun yung isisingit mo na value. Okay? Naintindihan ba? Or minsan hindi average eh. Minsan ginagamit din nila maximum. Or the maximum signal value among immediate values. Okay, which makes me think hindi dapat to between. Dapat to among. Kasi pag between, ibig sabihin ng dalawa lang yung tinitingnan ninyo. Eh, maaari kasing hindi lang dalawa yung tingnan natin. Okay? So, ano yung pinopoint natin? Okay, ano yung pinopoint natin? So, again, ito yung reference natin. Sabihin natin ang gagawin nating algorithm ito. 0 yung isisingit natin. And then, let us have A equals 1. I mean, A equals 2. I mean, A equals 1 half pala. Okay? So, again, A is between 0 and 1. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, fractional siya. So, let's have A equals 1 half. So, which means, ang i-generate yung signal is x of 1 half n. Okay? Is x of 1 half n. Okay. So, ganito yung basic na mangyayari dun sa operation niyo. So, galing dito. Okay. Since, sorry. Mali pala ito. So, yun. Nag-update siya. Hindi to A. 1 over A ito. Okay. This should have been 1 over A. Sileta. So this should have been 1 over A samples. Minus 1 samples. So ibig sabihin kung A is 1 half, this is 1 over 1 half. Okay? So that would be 1 over 1 half is 2 minus 1. So mag-insert ako ng isang sample. Okay? In between samples. So, ibig sabihin, galing dito, magsisingit ako ng isang sample. At kung pipiliin ko, ang isisingit kong sample ay 0. So, magsisingit ako ng 0 dito. Okay? Then ito, okay, magsisingit ako ng isa pang sample ulit. Then ito, magsisingit ako ng isa pang sample. Ito, magsisingit ako ng isa pang sample na 0. Ito rin, kunin ko. Then magsisingit ako isang sample. Ito, magsisingit ako isang sample after that. Naintindihan? So, ganun din sa kabila na, no? Pero again, sequential to ha. Magsisimula siya dun sa pinakadulo. Okay, ang kailangan niya una kasi talagang mahanap itong n equals 0 na reference niya. Para malaman niya kung kailan siya mag-i-insert. Okay? So, yan. Singit ng isang sample, tapos ito. Singit ng isang sample, ito. Then singit, ito. Yan. So, ngayon, kumpara niyo yun doon sa original yung signal. Okay? If you compare that to the original signal, dumami ngayon yung number of samples niyo. Tama ba? Okay. So, since dumami yung number of samples niyo, ang tawag sa operation na yan ay upsampling. Okay? So, ayun. By the way, ito pala yung medyo nakalimutan ko rin. Kanina, okay, originally, kung yung signal kanina ang pagbabasihan ninyo, okay, ang index nito kanina should have been n equals 1. Kanina ha? Okay. That should have been n equals 1. After the upsampling, operation, okay, after the upsampling operation, ang index na ngayon nito, hindi na 1. Okay, ang index na niyan ngayon ay, 2 na. Ito na yung magiging n equals 1 na signal. So, ibig sabihin, after the upsampling, magre-readjust yung nyo. Magre-readjust yung index niyo. Pero actually hindi siya magre-readjust. Graphically, magre-readjust siya. Okay? Pero essentially, hindi siya talaga magre-readjust. Okay? Mabe-verify niyo yun kapag tinignan niyo yung mga table na nandito sa example. Okay? If you actually take a look at the wala pala siyang example dito kasi nga hindi ko masyadong inano tong part na to kasi ito ay nasa activity ninyo actually. Okay? Yung itong part na to is more of on your activity. Okay? Pero on our lecture, parang hindi ko pala masyado palang inano to. Binigyan ng pansin. Nabanggit ko lang pero hindi ko nabigyan ng example. Okay. Pero ganito, para mas maano niyo siya, mas ma-appreciate niyo yung operation ng upsampling tsaka downsampling. Okay. Ganito. Pwede kayong mag-produce ng signal, mag-example ng signal which is sabihin natin negative 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4. Okay? Which is, ito yata yung which is your reference. No? Ito. Yan. Now, try to produce x of 2n on a tabular form. Okay? So, gamitin nyo pa rin yung mag-produce kayo ng original na time index. Okay? And then, yung original signal. Yung original na signal. Okay? Then, manipulated time index. Okay? Manipulated time index. So, ganito ang mangyayari sa manipulated time index nyo. No? Halimbawa, ang original time index niyo ay negative 5 yun. Sabihin natin, negative 7, negative 6, negative 5, negative 4, negative 3, negative 2, and so on. Okay? Ngayon, yung manipulated time index niyo, for example, in this case, should be 2n. That's the manipulated time index. And in this case, kung 2n, yung manipulated time index natin, ano yung magiging value ng manipulated time index natin dito?
Negative 14.
Negative 14. Okay? Ito naman, negative 12. Ito, negative 10, and so on. Negative 8, negative 3, negative 6 pala. Negative 4. Okay? Tingnan pa natin mga negative 1, 0. So, ito, magiging negative 2, ito 0. Okay? That's the manipulated time index. So, ngayon, yung magiging ninyo, yung magiging process signal ninyo or manipulated signal ninyo, okay, now becomes x of negative 14, x of negative 12, x of negative 10, x of negative 8, x of negative 6, x of negative 4, x of negative 2, x of 0, and so on. Which, accordingly, dun sa original signal ninyo, again, this is x of negative 5. Doon siya una mag-uumpisa na magkaroon ng non-zero value. At magkakaroon siya ng huling non-zero value, okay, sa signal value na x of 4. So, ibig sabihin nito, 0 to, 0 to, 0, 0, 0. Ito, meron na siya. Kaso magkakataon, 0 pa rin kasi siya. That's x of negative 4. So, 0 pa rin ito. Okay? Pero ito, x of negative 2, that would be 2. So, mapapansin nyo, between x of negative 4 saka x of negative 2, Okay, yung value, yung signal values na 0 at saka 2. In-skip niya tong 1 dun sa downsampled signal niyo. Di ba? Tama ba? Tapos ano susunod dyan? X of 0. X of 0 is 4 eh. Ito, X of 0 is 4. So between 0, 4, 0, 2, and 4, okay, mapapansin nyo, itong 3, in-skip din niya. Okay? So, ayun, if you actually put that in a table, okay, pag nilagay niyo yan sa table, makikita niyo rin yung operations na involved sa kanya. And consistent naman, okay, if you're manipulating the time index, consistent naman na you can generate this row, the manipulated time index row. Okay? Which titingnan nyo ngayon kung ano tong operation na gagawin nyo dun sa time index. Okay? But again, as a final reminder, yung signal niyo, yung process signal niyo, ang time index niyan, yung original time index pa rin. It won't change. Hindi magbabago yung index nung ano niyo. Okay. Ang mababago lang sa kanya yung signal values niya on those time indices, but not the time index or not the time indices themselves. Okay? Paliwanag ba? Okay. Now, let's go to the second set of operations, okay? Which now would transform your sample values. Okay, doon naman tayo sa part na yung sample values naman yung itatransform natin. So the second set of operations that transforms a signal or two or more signals, okay, involve operating on the signal values. Now, this operation would include amplitude scaling, okay, addition of two or more signals, and multiplication of two or more signals. Okay? So, sa amplitude scaling, you scale. When you scale, you multiply. Okay? When you scale something, you multiply something. Okay? So, scaling is of a signal is multiplication by a constant A. Okay? Which is accomplished by multiplying the value of every signal sample. So, pag mag-amplitude scaling kayo, okay, essentially, you have to multiply or you have to scale each of the signal values by the scaling factor. Okay, which in this case, 8. Okay? Maliwanag yan? Okay, next. Addition. In addition, the samples of two or more signals can be added, okay, to produce the signal sum. Okay? Ito yung importanteng note dito. Provided that the samples to be added have the same indices. Okay? Ibig sabihin, pag magpe-perform kayo ng addition of two or more signals, okay? If you are to perform addition of two or more signals, you can only add, okay? You can only add signal values which possess the same indices. Hindi kayo pwede mag-add ng signal value pag magkaiba yung index nila. Okay? Pag magkaiba yung index nila, ibig sabihin nun, sa iba nyo siya dapat i-add. Hindi nyo siya pwedeng i-add dun sa sa signal value na iba yung index. Okay? Same thing with multiplication. Ganun din. The multiplication of two or more signals would require you to multiply signal values, okay, which possess the same indices. Okay? Maliwanag ba? Okay, tingnan natin itong example 9, no? Para mas maliwanagan natin. Okay, so dito, we will have to, we have signals x1 at saka x2. Okay, we have signals x1 and x2. Okay, so ngayon, we have to evaluate una is itong signal y1, okay, which is ito yung set of operations na gagawin nyo. Okay? So, yung 2x1, okay, is scaling of x1 by 2. Okay? So, ibig sabihin nun, yung signal values ng x1, i-multiply natin by 2. Okay? Then, finally, okay, ipoproduce natin yung sum na 2x1, okay, plus x2. So, ibig sabihin, addition of 2 signals. So, ibig sabihin, meron dalawang operations na kailangan natin i-accomplish dito. Okay. So, ito yun, para sa y1. Okay. So, dito, ito yung original signal nyo, no? Ito yung original na x1 ninyo. Okay? So, take note na kung ito yung reference niyo, yung signal value na yan would appear when the index is 0. Okay? So, I hope maliwanag na tayo sa part na yan. Ha? Okay. So, ayun. Now, what will I do with this one? Again, ipoproduce ko tong signal na to, which is, I would scale x1, okay, with 2. Ibig sabihin, itong mga values na to, negative 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, yung mga signal values na yan, i-multiply ko yan each by 2, by the scaling factor. So, yung 1, dito sa 2x1, okay, yung negative 1 na yan, magiging negative 2. So, negative 1 times 2, negative 2. 0 times 2 is 0. 1 times 2 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4, and so on. Maliwanag yung scaling? So, you have to multiply, okay, or you have to scale, okay, your signal values by the scaling factor. Okay, now, second naman, yung second operation natin is to add 2 signals, which yung scaled x1 at saka yung x2. Okay. Pero take note na dito sa given niyo, okay, dito sa given niyo, take note na yung x1 at saka yung x2 ay mag-a-appear at different points in time. Okay? Itong unang non-zero value na to para sa x1 ay mag-a-appear when n equals 5. When n equals negative 5. While yung unang non-zero value para sa x2 ay mag-a-appear when n equals negative 3. Okay? So, dyan pa lang, ibig sabihin, sa point ko na dyan, ang gusto kong i-point out is that magsisimula yung dalawang signal niyo on a different on different points. Okay? So, yun na nga, pag dinabilite nyo, makikita nyo visually yung pagkakaiba nila. Which means na si X2, magsisimula 2 samples after nagsimula si X1. Okay? Maliwanag ba? Hello? Wala sumasagot Nandiyan pa ba ako? Ayun. Sige. So, ang point ko lang, baka lang kasi makakita kayo ng signal na i-add nyo itong dalawang to, for example i-add nyo itong dalawang to. Baka lang bigla kayong tumalon sa conclusion na pwede nyo i-add yung negative 1 at saka 2. Okay? Again, ang reminder natin is that you need to add, when you do addition, okay, you can only add signal values, okay, having the same indices. So in this case, itong negative 1 na to, okay, at kahit i-scale mo yan sa 2, okay, which is negative 2, at ito, positive 2, hindi mo pwedeng i-add yan ng basta-basta. Or hindi nyo pwedeng i-add yan talaga. Bakit? Kasi yung index nito negative 5. Yung index ni negative 2, negative 5. While yung index ni positive 2, okay, is negative 3. So hindi mo siya may-add. Okay. What you can add, okay, is kung ano yung signal value ni 2x1, okay, when n equals negative 3. Which in this case, ito. Yan yung pwede mong i-add. Okay? Naintindihan ba? So, kaya madaling makita ito kapag ka-tabulate nyo. Okay? Kasi mas makikita nyo yung mas makikita nyo yung mga signal values, okay? Makikita nyo yung mga signal values having the same indices. Kasi dapat mag-appear yan sa isang column ng table ninyo. So, once mag-appear yan sa isang table ng column, mag-appear yan sa isang column ng table ninyo, it means pwede nyo yung i-add, pwede nyo yung i-multiply. Okay? So, if you now perform yung operation ngayon na 2x1 plus x2, okay, mapaproduce itong signal na to. Okay? Which is your y1. Okay? So, again, pwede nyo ilagay yan sa vector form. Pwede siyang ilagay sa vector form natin. Okay, which makes it y1 of n equals negative 2, 0, 4, 6, 8, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Na ang index natin, ito, dun sa pangalawang 8. So, dito. So, yan yung output signal ninyo, okay, or yung process signal ninyo, okay, in vector form. So, yung mga examples dito, if you are to look at them at a more careful with a more careful studying, okay, makukuha ma-discern nyo naman yung pattern, okay, in terms of how these operations are performed. Okay? So, yun yung rule lang talaga na tatandaan niyo in terms of addition and multiplication. Okay? The rule is you can only add or multiply. Okay? Add na natin yung multiply dito. Okay? You can only add or multiply signal values which possess the same indices. Okay, so again, ang pinakamadaling way para makita niyo yung same indices na yan is to put your operations on a table para mas madali siyang makita. By the way, ginagamit ko dito sa pag-generate ng table na to ay Excel. Okay? Excel ang ginagamit ko dyan. So actually, mga naka-formula yung mga yan. So if you know how to use Excel, okay, kung marunong kayo mag-Excel, pwede nyo gamitan na lang ng formula yung iba dyan para hindi na rin kayo mag-ooperate or mag-iisa-isa ng calculations. Okay? So, ayun. I hope marunong kayo mag-Excel para Sige, pero sa next meeting natin, pakita ko sa inyo kung paano mag-generate, for example, ng isa sa mga operations na yan. Okay? So, ayun. May questions ba so far? Okay, so mukhang wala naman. Okay. So, ganito, mag-announce lang ako ng konting changes. Okay? So, since ang due date ng ang due date ng assignment 1 ng homeworks 1, 2 and 3 kasi tatlo na yung na-assign ko yata ang homework sa inyo, tama ba? Tatlo na yung naka-assign yung homeworks. Okay. So, baka palitan ko yung due date nitong homework 3. Kasi ang May 8 yata yung due date nito. Okay, May 8 yata yung due date nito. And clearly, baka hindi tayo umabot sa lesson natin on that would cover homework 3. Okay, so papalitan natin yung due date niyan. Ilalagay na lang natin siya dun sa next set of due dates. Okay, so magiging basta masasakop na siya sa quiz number 2. Okay, so yun ang mangyayari sa kanya. Nandun na siya sa quiz number 2, bale. So which means ang coverage ng quiz number 1 ninyo would be homeworks 1 and homeworks 2 na lang. Okay? Naintindihan ba? Okay, so pag hindi ko siya nabago, paalala niyo siya sa akin. Kasi baka makalimutan ko siya. Ayun, after kasi ng lesson natin, may aayusin lang ako konti pa. So baka makalimutan ko kasi siyang gawin at a later time. Okay, so kapag napansin niyo na medyo hindi ko napapalitan yung deadline, wag kayong mag-hesitate na mag-PM. Mag-message sa akin na, sir, pakipalitan po yung deadline ng homework 3 kasi sabi niyo. Okay. So ayun, paki-remind na lang din ako na kung medyo makakalimutan ko siya. Okay, so sige, I think that's it for today. I think also we will have an online session sa Thursday para sa para sa next topics natin. Okay? So let's dismiss the class na. Thank you for attending today's meeting.
Thank you po, sir.